South Carolina does not have the number one ranked transfer portal class in the country, but there is something they are doing better than any other program in all of America. We talk about it next. Locked On Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I am your host, Chris Marler, host of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, now the number one ranked sports podcast network in the country, and we have you to thank for that. We also have our friends at Game Time to thank for this today's episode. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I believe South Carolina is at home against Texas on Thursday in a massive top 5 matchup for women's basketball. I think they're at home because I remember the Texas coach was complaining about it. But if they are, maybe that's a really, really good opportune time to go look up some tickets on the Game Time app and get a good seat for that. It is at home. I just made sure and double checked. We got a good show for you today. We are going to talk more about the portal. Slow day for South Carolina. No new commitments. One player did enter the transfer portal. But I brought this up yesterday, and it's something that it isn't really being talked about a lot. And I think I know why, but it's also something I think deserves to be talked about a lot more. And it's also fascinating to me. Shameless plug, I wrote an article about it today on LouisianaSports.net, my main job. I urge you to go look at it because it is specifically about South Carolina, way more than anything that is LSU-based or Louisiana-based. And I had a conversation with Clark Brooks. And if you remember Clark Brooks, we had him on this podcast earlier before the year to talk about LaNorris Sellers and his ceiling and all this kind of stuff. So Clark is just a football savant. Great dude. I love him for a number of reasons. One of the reasons I love him because he's the only person I know that talks faster than me on a podcast. And he's very high on LaNorris Sellers going into the season. But he's a guy he was known as SEC Stat Cat for a long time on social media. And he would break down all these crazy ins and outs of fun, real nerdy type of analytics that I just happen to love. So, if you want to know how much pre-snap motion is this team running in comparison to other teams, like how often they line up in this route, what is LaNorris Sellers' completion percentage on adjusted depth, target rate, blah, 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 blah. He is now still doing that kind of stuff in the season, but he's also in charge of he's the head of On3's eval and ranking team for the transfer portal. So all of the players that go through the portal, Clark Brooks is evaluating them and then ranking them for On3. So all the On3 rankings we talk about, hey, so-and-so is Jacarius Peak is the number 7 overall player in the portal, and he landed South Carolina. Those are from Clark Brooks. What has fascinated me and something we haven't talked enough about in general with the portal is the portal's great. It's brand new, shiny objects and shiny toys that you're bringing in. It has a bigger influx of talent every single year. We've talked about the numbers. Right now, you're at over 4,000 players that are in the portal. You're at, I think it's 2,982 FBS players that are in the portal. Right around 54% of the players in have found a new home, with 46% of the players still looking for a new home. 31 total, so right over 1% have actually withdrawn from the portal, something we don't see nearly as much anymore. That number is down from around 4% last year. But all of the numbers, ins and outs of the portal are fascinating to me. But from a South Carolina standpoint, they're not going to be a top 5 class. They're not going to go out and spend more money than Texas Tech. They're not going to go out and spend more money than LSU this year or Texas or an Ohio State or any of those things. What South Carolina kind of has to live in is, hey, we're really good at identifying talent that oftentimes is overlooked. We're going to get a couple studs, but oftentimes a lot of these overlooked guys, and we're going to develop the crap out of them into being legitimate key contributors and also potential NFL draft picks, right? Like Kyle Kennard was not the number 1 ranked defensive player in the portal for the SEC coming to South Carolina. He ended up being the defensive player of the year in the conference, right? Like some of these other Nick Eamon-Warrior. Well, that's a bad example because he was just a recruit and stayed here. But you understand what I'm saying. I was about to go down a whole tangent of how well they've developed overlooked talent. But for the portal alone, they have also done a really good job of it. They just don't buy in bulk, right? They're just like right now. Arkansas has, if you look at some of these numbers, Arkansas has, I think, 33 players committed. LSU, Kentucky, each have 26. Auburn, right around 26, right? South Carolina's not buying in bulk. They don't. That's not what their MO is in general. But also, it's not what they want to do as a program. They do want to develop high school talent. But here's the thing they're doing better than anyone else in the country. And this is from a conversation I had with Clark Brooks. Let's look at this through a different lens. Like, it's great to look at how great of a class you have. And I want to be very clear, too. I'm not trying to move goalposts or say, like, well, the class isn't that great, so let's look at it like a different angle so it makes us look even better. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I personally, I think that the class they've put together is really, really good. There's some more players that are coming, and I think there's between 2 and 4 they're still going to get before the portal closes on Friday. That's not what I'm doing here. What I am saying is looking at this through a lens that isn't just, hey, how many good guys did you bring in? That's a really big part of it. But South Carolina was very, very close to losing several key players. The first thing that they had to do in the offseason was keep Sellers, keep Dylan Stewart, and keep Nick Harbor, right? So my question was, if you lost those guys, where would they be in the portal? Like where would they rank in the portal? And there's no one to ask better than the guy making the rankings, Clark Brooks. But the question was, where would they rank in the portal? Because when you look at it through a different lens, instead of just, oh my God, South Carolina got the number 1 offensive tackle at the time. Now he's number 2 in the entire portal, the number 7 overall ranked player, Jacarius Peak. Well, what if I told you that by retaining Stewart and Sellers, those are 2 guys that would have, if they entered the portal, they would have been top 5 players. LaNorris Sellers would have been a top 3 player, according to Clark Brooks. Dylan Stewart would have been the number 1 ranked edge rusher in the entire portal. And I don't know where he would rank necessarily, but I do know that the number 1 ranked edge rusher currently in there is at 3. So if they both entered, you're talking about 2 potential top 5 players that you have lost from South Carolina. I'm not even going to get into where our mindset would be if we lost 2 top 5 players to the portal and we saw them land somewhere else in a different uniform for next year. What I am saying is, what does this conversation look like from a talent acquisition standpoint if you include the retention part of it? How are we talking about South Carolina if instead of just saying, well, they brought in this one really, really good offensive lineman, we're saying, oh my God, they brought in 3 top 10 players from the portal? Because that's essentially what you've done. Like, you have brought in what would be a top 3 player at quarterback. You have brought in and retained the number 1 overall edge rusher that would have been in the portal, right? And then you also have had the number 2 offensive tackle in the portal. That was number 1 until a day ago when Jordan Seaton went in. How are we talking about this job? Like, we've already just gloated and patted Shane Beamer on the back a ton in the offseason. But how are we talking about the job that South Carolina does if we brought up the retention aspect of it and the players and the level of talent of the players that they have coming back in this core nucleus of players retained, players acquired? There are very few players. I will give you the perfect example. LSU, number 1 class in the portal. They got Sam Levitt, number 1 player in the portal. They don't have 2 guys they retained that are top 10. Trey'Dez Green, he said, would be probably a top 10 player, the tight end from there. Really good freak athlete, 6'7", would definitely command a top 10 ranking. But how many teams around the country have 2 that they would have had back? And for South Carolina, again, you got to think about where our level of confidence was in keeping either of those guys. There were people around the program like that for Sellers alone that was probably around 60%. He'll come back. like 55, 60%, maybe he'll come back. Dylan Stewart did not feel that confident. It was so much less confident in Stewart that the conversation was surrounding it was, well, if Sellers comes back, that'd be a pretty big selling point for him. But we didn't have a ton of confidence in that happening, especially after Sterling Lucas left. So again, looking at this through a different lens, there is a world we're living in where you have one player that South Carolina brought in that's a top 10 player in the portal. Top 10. Okay? Yeah, like around the SEC, there's 4 of the top 5 players that are currently signed or committed are going to SEC schools. All 4 are going to different SEC schools. Like Levitt's going to LSU, Cam Coleman's going to Texas, Chaz Coleman going to Tennessee, and then Jacarius Peak is the 4th, who's coming to South Carolina. So you're in that upper echelon of people bringing in elite talent. But you now think about what this looks like. There's not any of those schools, including Texas. Like if they lost Arch Manning, it would be Arch Manning and who else? That would be another top 10 player. And that's what South Carolina, the level of talent they have coming back on next year's team. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the exact conversation and the quotes from the conversation with Clark Brooks. We're also going to get caught up on the other news from the portal. 2 visitors are lining up from Thursday. A big-time running back that just won MVP of a big bowl game that they could be visiting on Thursday, as well as another player from an SEC school as well. Locked on Gamecocks continues right after this. All right. Before we continue on, I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Wayfair. Wayfair is one of today's sponsors for today's episode. And I told you a lot about Wayfair during the Christmas season, but it doesn't just stop when the Christmas season is over. The new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That is why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. I would bet you they even have signs that have an extra K in them. I should probably just look on Wayfair. I picked up new bedding I think we just got a new bedding for our master bedroom. We just also got new curtains and blinds in our guest room, and we did all of it through Wayfair. And we also just got a table. I don't even know what it's called. It's not an armoire, but it's something that goes in the back wall. It's beautiful. It's a giant. Allie's going to kill me for not remembering what the name of it is, but we got it from Wayfair, and it's awesome. You guys know what I'm talking about. So listen, I tell you what, get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. I don't know how I'm drawing a blank on the name of this furniture piece. It's really nice. It's like, this is going to be one of those things where as soon as I'm done recording, I'm going to remember it just like that. Just as soon as we're done. It's not an armoire. I can't even say armoire. Anyway, let's get back to the show. See, it's not just names that I can't pronounce. It's apparently furniture as well. So I want to get back into what we were talking about from before the break. And that is the conversation I had with Clark Brooks about where each South Carolina player they retain, the big names, where they would be. Okay. And again, he is the person that's in charge of ranking every single player that enters the portal 4-on-3, right? This is not just like, hey, I talked to so-and-so, said it was pretty good. This is the guy, right? So, LaNorris Sellers, this is his quote. Sellers is an impact 5-star for 2026. He'd be QB 2 or 3 for next season. He would drop a spot if Ty Simpson changed his mind, but the debate over him and Sam Levitt would be interesting. But despite upside and tools, I would probably have Levitt over him. Still, he'd be a top 3 portal player. Let's start there. Now, he said 5-star impact for 2026. That does not mean he's we're not just throwing around words here. There's only 2 players, I believe, in the entire on 3 ranking as of this year that have a 5-star label and a 5-star ranking and evaluation by their name. There's some really good players. There's some former 5-stars that are 4-stars out of the portal, but there's only, I believe, 2 5-stars currently ranked in the portal. Sellers would be a third. Sam Levitt is one of them. Cam Coleman is one of them. And Sellers would be a third. Now, my internet's taking forever to make sure on this, and I don't know why, but of course, that is what's happening in real time. Now, I also brought up Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart is a former 5-star out of high school, and I asked him where he would be. Stewart is also an impact 5-star, like he was last year as well if he would have entered the portal. Even though he wasn't as good this year, he's a 6'6". He is 6'6" and built different. He's a top 10 player at impacts. He would be player 1 at his position if portaling. So again, what I just told you was you have, let's see, 3,000 players in the portal, right? 3,000 players in the portal. You have 2 that are ranked 5-stars. 2 in the country. Sam Levitt, Cam Coleman. Sam Levitt, Cam Coleman. We're not going to get into, I saw this earlier about how, like, well, we better not spend all of our money on these 2 players. Sure. But I also want to remind you, Cam Coleman just signed a deal at Texas, and I can absolutely confirm for you that his asking price to start negotiations at LSU was $3.5 million. Sam Levitt got over 5 at LSU as well. Now, this is the top player in the portal. Coleman, a lot of that, like the $3.5 million, there were several teams that heard that and were like, there's no way. We're not, like, LSU was one of them, like, no, we're good on that. Alabama, no, we're good on that. But teams like Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, they were all on board with paying that. My point I'm trying to make here is we don't know. I don't know yet what Stewart or LaNorris got for their deal. I just also want us to all be on comfortable, at least, with the idea that if they did get paid a ton, I know there were rumors that the 2 cost $6 million total. I was told from pretty good authority that was not the case. But if they did, that is what the market is set at for those type of players. There are two transfer portal 5-stars. The person making the rankings is telling you right now, if those 2 entered the portal, there'd be 4, and 2 of them are from South Carolina. That's the level of talent you retained. Now, I also asked him about Nick Harbor, and this one was kind of interesting because I think it's a very honest and real take, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what he does in his 4th year on campus. Harbor has potential, but the only substance has been winning deep off of play action. That's fine, but we want our best receivers to win consistently without help. He would be a low-range 91 grade, okay? So a top 30 to 40 player in the portal. Maybe even a high 90 because receivers that transfer tend to be boom or bust at their new stops. He seems like he would be more of a bust, but he is currently wide receiver number 29 in my early impact draft. Okay. So basically, I'm going through here just if he's a high 90 or 91, that means he would be right around a top 150 player. Number 29 receiver, that's pretty standard. To put that in comparison to some of these names, a 91 player would be a top 125 player, and it would go along with players like Marquise Johnson from Missouri, Trey Brown, the kid from Old Dominion, that we talked about briefly on our previous show, Winston Watkins, a kid from Ole Miss, and some of those players like that. Malcolm Simmons, a kid that went from Auburn to Texas Tech, those kind of players. It's also on par with Quaysheed Scott, who is the number 96 overall player in the portal as well. So that is where those 3 players would rank. That is the level of talent you've brought in. 2 guys that would be top 5 players, 5-stars, and then another one's probably a top 100, top 120 player. And now you start looking at the rest of the players that you have brought in, because now it looks a lot more impressive when you add in the part of the retention. And here's the thing too, guys. All of the shiny new toys you get are what's going to steal a lot of headlines and make people the most excited. And I get it. But I just, again, want us to look at this through a different lens and realize as also like South Carolina finishing with the 20th ranked portal class is really good for one. Like that is it's very similar to how where we stand with like high school recruiting. It's actually a little bit further back because in the portal, there are, I believe, 12 teams that were in the top 21 overall at least from this morning. 12 SEC teams ranked in the top 21. So that means that 75% of the teams in the conference rank right up there. South Carolina was in that group. Now, they're going to be a top 20, top 25 class for sure. It depends on who they add. They might move up. We'll see. There should be a flurry of commitments across the country. You're seeing some other people enter the portal late at key positions, like I told you was going to happen, because they are going to hold a lot more leverage. But you're going to have a top 20 to top 25 class regardless for South Carolina. And you look at where that ranks. If you move up, you have basically, if you add in the retention, you have basically added 3 top 10 players and 2 5-stars. No one else in the country has done that. And I look at what Shane Beamer has built, and again, you have won so much this offseason. Like it adds so much value and proof of the pudding of what you're building and the culture that players can believe in. But here's the thing. And now it's time to kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Now there's really no excuse not to win. This is an unbelievably talented roster that you have put together. And now it's time to make sure you can go win. There's so much reason for excitement with this program and where it's headed for next year. There really is. Like, this is not just me trying to blow smoke or say like, oh man, well, maybe they'll be pretty good. They've made some really good additions. They have made some really good hires. And if you can't go win with this, and honestly, if I am being objective here, if you can't go win at a high level with this, some very serious conversations are going to have to be had. But I think they will. That is all for the second part of this show. When we come back, I'm going to talk to you briefly about who else is in the potential fold, who's going to be coming to campus here on Thursday, possibly. 2 new targets and also 1 that entered the portal on Tuesday as well. Locked on Gamecocks continues right after this. All right. Before we close out the show, I want to give a quick shout out one more time to our friends at Game Time. And listen, there's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all, the energy of the bands, the moment you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be really frustrating. Long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout, all of those things can be the worst. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I tell you what, I love Game Time, especially for basketball season. They have so many good options. They have block tickets that you can get in certain sections for discounts. They have the best customer service in the game. And seeing college football or basketball tickets start as low as $10 made it easy to plan my trip last year for I think it was a January game for Alabama and South Carolina in Colonial Life. I'll be coming back for another one this year as well. Probably some baseball games as well. But there's so much to love about Game Time. And so in an industry that never seems to prioritize customer service, Game Time does it better than anyone else. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, that's LOCKEDCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, let's go over. Let me first start by saying this too. Give me some feedback if you guys enjoyed this show at all. It's hard to like. I know some people are really frustrated with the NIL and college football portal era, and it's turned off a lot of fans, which is fair. Like I get it. There are parts of it still, I think, probably because it's so new, that fascinate me. I don't love seeing kids go out and just chase checks. I think they should be paid and be paid what they're worth, and I think all that's great. I don't love this new era that we're in by any means. I understand that we're in it, and there are parts of it that are very, very, very fascinating to me. I I hope you guys like the show, because this specific part of it that I think is an angle that not a lot of people are looking at right now. It's just kind of unique and interesting to me, and I hope you guys felt that way as well. But if you didn't, I'll make some adjustments, and we'll do something different along next time. Okay, before we close out, so one new player entered the portal, and that is Jalewis Solomon. That happened about an hour before recording this show, so around 5 o'clock on Tuesday evening. He's a defensive back, obviously sophomore. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. He played in 7 games in 2 years. He only had 3 tackles. Not a guy that had a ton of action, but he is somebody. He is now the 24th player that's entered the portal. And this late in the process, it is just kind of interesting to me. It's just kind of interesting to me because I told you I thought there'd be a lot of G5 players enter late. There's a kid from Kennesaw State that I really hope South Carolina gets in on. True freshman that had 9 sacks this year and double-digit tackles for loss. We'll get to that tomorrow. But him and Miles Norwood are 2 defensive backs of the 24 total players that have entered. Brubaker also entered the portal earlier today, which was something new. So now you've lost another center, and I believe now this is your 9th scholarship offensive lineman, which is insane. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. You know what I mean? That's but again, we've already been over this about how I feel about some of the offensive linemen. It's just interesting to me that we're still in this situation where people are entering the portal, and then like it would have made more sense if they were going to be doing it earlier. That's all I'll say about that. Okay, so here's the deal. 3 players they are bringing on visits this weekend. Well, not this weekend because the portal closes on Friday. It is the 13th, so they're bringing in 2 guys on Friday, nothing like the last minute. Caleb Herring, an edge rusher from Tennessee, and then Talik Lockett from Texas State, really big prospect from Texas State that has kind of come on the radar as of late, has several power forward programs that are looking at him. And then here's the one I'm very excited about, and it's kind of an interesting one. His name came in late after Hollywood Smothers decided to switch from Bama to Texas, and I got real excited about this. Even though you might be set at the position, Christian Clark from Texas. Texas has got, like, I brought this up. You talk about the South Carolina from a position unit standpoint, got gutted on the offensive line. Alabama, similar with the offensive line. LSU, similar with receiver and offensive line. Oklahoma with their secondary. There's just a few different teams. I mean, Auburn in general, they lost everybody. But Texas's running back room is in the same air as the other ones I already mentioned from their position unit standpoint. They lost 4 guys to the portal immediately. This was the one that stayed behind and played in the Cheez-It Bowl and ended up having, I think, 19 or 20 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. It was the Cheez-It Bowl MVP. I will default similar to what I said about Georgia and Kirby Smart. If you are good enough to be a skill position player under Steve Sarkisian, I would tend to trust that this kid is a baller. He will be on a visit on Thursday the 15th. You have 3 guys left that you have visits coming with, and it's a running back, an edge rusher, a defensive end, and then an offensive lineman. I was told they still want to take 2 tight ends if they can. One of the tight ends that they really were interested in was a kid out of Yale, Spencer Mermans. He committed Georgia Tech today, so he is no longer a part of the fold, or no longer a part of their focus. I don't know if they're going to work to get anyone else on, but we will see if they do. The portal closes on Friday. So, like I said, nothing like a last-minute thing to try and get a couple people in here. I would love if they can get all 3. I think they'll get at least 1, and I will say that 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 24 people you have had on campus, right? I do this math every time, and I somehow always forget it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and it was 14 again. I just remember what you're talking about, dude. 14 of the 24 players they have brought on campus for a visit have committed. That is an exceptional rate. It's over 63%, and they can have a chance to do this again with who they have coming on here. I think they feel good about where they're at now. I'm hoping they don't lose anyone else. I don't know if they will or think they will, but that is where things stand now. So that is all for today's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. This is one I put a decent amount of effort into. Not to say I don't from the other ones, but I was really excited to talk about this one today specifically. Thank you so much for making Locked On a part of your day. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please listen on audio as well. That helps the channel grow a ton more. And if you're on social media, wish my mom, Pastor Patty Sue on Twitter. I think it's Pastor Patty Sue 1 on Twitter. A happy birthday, because tomorrow is her birthday on January 14th. I appreciate you guys so much. Until next time, go Cox.